The beam from North Point Lighthouse cut through the fog like a blade, its rhythmic sweep marking time in the endless gray. Finn Barrett watched the horizon from his perch in the research station's observation deck, his weathered hands wrapped around a steaming mug of coffee. 3 months into his posting at this remote facility, and the solitude was beginning to feel less like a choice and more like a sentence. The station's sophisticated marine research equipment hummed around him, monitoring everything from water temperature to subsurface acoustic signatures. As lead researcher for the Pacific Marine Biology Institute's Deep Water Study Program, Finn had volunteered for this assignment, eager to escape the politics and pressures of academia. At 32, he'd already made a name for himself studying bioluminescent organisms, but his controversial theories about potential undiscovered species had made him somewhat of an outsider in the scientific community. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in watercolor shades of purple and orange, Finn's equipment detected something unusual. The seismographs showed subtle vibrations, different from the normal patterns of oceanic movement. More intriguing were the energy readings, bursts of bioluminescence unlike anything he'd documented before. "Computer, run a full spectrum analysis," Finn commanded, setting down his coffee and leaning toward the monitors. The artificial intelligence system processed the data, displaying a cascade of numbers and graphs that made his heart race. The energy signatures were organized, almost rhythmic, suggesting intelligence rather than random natural phenomena. Pulling on his thermal wetsuit, Finn knew he should probably wait for better conditions, but curiosity had always been his weakness. The station's advanced diving equipment would protect him from the cold Pacific waters, and the integrated sensors would allow him to gather first-hand data. As he sealed his helmet and ran through safety checks, a small voice in the back of his mind whispered that this could be the discovery that would validate his theories. The descent into the darkness was familiar, but tonight felt different. His suit's lights illuminated particles floating in the water like stars in a liquid sky. At 30 meters down, he saw it, a soft, pulsing blue light that seemed to dance through the water. The color was unlike any bioluminescence he'd ever encountered, more like moonlight than biological chemistry. As he approached, the light began to move in patterns that defied natural explanation. It swirled and condensed, forming shapes that reminded him of ancient symbols he'd seen in maritime museums. His suit's sensors were going crazy, recording energy readings that should have been impossible at this depth. Suddenly, the water around him began to vibrate with an intense frequency. The blue light expanded, forming what appeared to be a perfect circle in the water. Finn's scientific mind raced to explain what he was seeing, but before he could process it, the circle burst into brilliant white light. The force of the explosion sent him tumbling backward, his safety tether the only thing keeping him from being swept away. When his vision cleared and he stabilized himself, Finn found himself facing something that challenged everything he thought he knew about marine biology. Through the dissipating light, he saw a figure, distinctly humanoid from the waist up, but transforming into something else below. The being's skin seemed to shift colors like the surface of a soap bubble, and patterns of bioluminescence flowed across its form like living tattoos. More shocking than its appearance was its eyes, deep, iridescent pools that seemed to hold entire galaxies within them. The creature moved through the water with impossible grace, and as it approached him, Finn realized that his pursuit of undiscovered species had led him to something far beyond the realm of conventional science. His heart pounding, Finn reached out a hand, not in fear, but in wonder. The being mirrored his gesture, pressing its palm against his suit's glove. In that moment, despite the layers of advanced materials between them, he felt a connection that transcended physical touch, a resonance that seemed to echo through his very being. Through the neural interface in his diving suit, Finn heard what could only be described as singing, a haunting melody that seemed to carry meaning beyond mere sound. As the creature's song filled his mind, he understood with startling clarity that this was more than a simple encounter between a scientist and an unknown species. This was first contact with something that would change not just his life, but potentially the course of human understanding forever. As if confirming his thoughts, the being's form shifted, revealing more clearly what appeared to be a female torso merging into an elaborate tail structure that defied biological classification. She, and Finn was certain now that the being was female, moved closer, her bioluminescent patterns intensifying as she studied him with equal curiosity. In that moment, suspended in the dark Pacific waters, Finn Barrett realized that all his years of research, all his controversial theories, had only scratched the surface of what was possible. The real adventure was just beginning, and the mysteries of the deep were far more extraordinary than even he had imagined. The next 72 hours passed in a blur of sleepless excitement and furious documentation. Finn hadn't reported his discovery to the Institute yet. Something told him he needed to understand more first. The being, who had somehow communicated that her name was Karina, returned each night at precisely the same time, when the moon reached its zenith. Through a combination of gestures, bioluminescent patterns, and what Finn could only describe as telepathic impressions, they began to establish communication. Karina wasn't simply a mermaid in the mythological sense. She was something far more complex. She came from what she termed a parallel hydroverse, a water-based dimension that occasionally intersected with Earth's oceans through naturally occurring quantum folds in spacetime. During their third meeting, Karina demonstrated abilities that defied physical laws. With a graceful wave of her hand, she could manipulate water currents, creating swirling vortexes that danced like liquid ballet. More incredibly, she could generate fields of energy that allowed her to temporarily alter the properties of matter, including, as Finn discovered with astonishment, his need to rely on his diving equipment. "You can breathe now," her thoughts touched his mind as she created a shimmering bubble around his head. Hesitantly, Finn released his helmet's seal. The air, if that's what it was, felt different but perfectly breathable, charged with an energy that made every intake feel like drinking liquid vitality. "How is this possible?" Finn asked, his voice carrying clearly through the strange membrane she had created. Karina's response came as a series of images and concepts that bloomed in his mind. Her people had evolved to manipulate quantum fields, treating the very fabric of reality as an artist might treat a canvas. These abilities had developed over millions of years, driven by the unique properties of their dimension. But beneath the wonder of these revelations, Finn sensed a deep sadness in Karina. When he asked about it, the water around them darkened with her mood, her bioluminescent patterns shifting to deeper, more somber hues. "Our dimension is dying," she explained through their mental link. "The quantum barriers between realms are becoming unstable. I am one of many searchers, sent to find compatible worlds and beings who might help us survive." The weight of this confession hung between them in the dark water. Finn realized that his discovery wasn't just about proving his theories. It was about potentially saving an entire civilization. But as he looked into Karina's ethereal eyes, he saw more than just a representative of an advanced species. He saw someone who carried the hopes and fears of her people with a grace that humbled him. "I can grant wishes," she continued, her thoughts tinged with both power and warning. "It is how we study the compatibility of different realms. By fulfilling desires, we learn how other beings think, how they handle power, whether they can be trusted with the knowledge of our existence." To demonstrate, she touched his forehead gently. In an instant, Finn found himself understanding complex mathematical equations that had puzzled him for years. Solutions to problems in his research suddenly became crystal clear, as if they had always been obvious. "This is just a fraction of what I could share," Karina's thoughts whispered. "But each gift carries a price. The universe demands balance. Are you prepared for what that might mean?" Finn floated in the darkness, watching the play of bioluminescence across Karina's form. The scientist in him craved the knowledge she offered, answers to questions humanity had pondered for centuries. But the human in him recognized the dangerous appeal of such power and the responsibility that came with it. Before he could respond, His suit's emergency systems activated, warning of an approaching storm system. Karina's expression showed understanding. She knew their time was up for now. With a gesture, she dissolved the breathing bubble around him, allowing him to reseal his helmet. Tomorrow, her thoughts touched his mind one last time. Tomorrow, you must decide if you're ready to learn what your wishes might cost. As Finn ascended through the darkening water, his mind raced with possibilities. He had always sought to unlock the ocean's mysteries, but now those mysteries were offering to unlock themselves, at a price. The rational part of his brain warned him about the dangers of pursuing this further without reporting it to his superiors. The rest of him knew that he had passed the point of conventional scientific protocols the moment he had locked eyes with Karina. Back in his station, as the storm raged outside, Finn began to write in his personal journal, trying to make sense of everything he had learned. His official logs remained empty. This discovery felt too personal, too important to share just yet. As lightning illuminated the waves below his window, he could have sworn he saw patterns in the water matching Karina's bioluminescence, calling to him like a beacon in the night. The full moon hung like a silver coin above North Point Lighthouse as Finn prepared for his descent. His hands trembled slightly as he checked his equipment, not from fear, but from anticipation. Over the past week, his encounters with Karina had shifted from something merely extraordinary to deeply personal. Tonight would be different. He could feel it in the unusual warmth of the water, in the strange patterns of bioluminescence that had been appearing even during daylight hours. Marine life around the station had begun behaving oddly, schools of fish moving in impossible geometric patterns, whales singing songs that made his instruments malfunction, seabirds circling in formations that seemed to mirror the quantum symbols Karina used. As he descended through the thermocline, Finn saw her waiting. Tonight, Karina's natural luminescence pulsed with a fierce intensity that made the surrounding water seem to shimmer. She had created what appeared to be an underwater garden of light, with structures that resembled coral but glowed with internal energy, swaying to currents that didn't exist in this dimension. "Your world is beautiful," she projected into his mind as she formed the familiar breathing bubble around him, "but it carries echoes of the same instability that threatens mine. Watch." With a gesture, she transformed the water around them into a three-dimensional map of ocean currents. Finn gasped as he saw what she meant. Patterns of energy that shouldn't exist, quantum disturbances creating microscopic tears in the fabric of reality. Each wish granted draws energy from both dimensions, Karina explained, her expression grave. "It weakens the barriers between worlds. My people didn't understand this at first. We thought we were being generous, helping other species evolve. By the time we realized the cost, our dimension had become dangerously unstable." Finn watched as she demonstrated, creating a small whirlpool of pure energy between them. "Make a wish," she encouraged. "Something small. You'll see what I mean." After a moment's hesitation, Finn wished to understand the complex language of whale songs, something he'd studied for years without breakthrough. Immediately, his mind filled with comprehension. The haunting calls he'd recorded suddenly became clear as speech, layers of meaning and emotion he never suspected existed. But as the knowledge settled into his consciousness, he saw the price. The energy whirlpool turned dark, and through it, he glimpsed Karina's world, an endless ocean of impossible beauty, now marred by growing rifts of darkness. The strain of granting even this small wish had caused another tear. "Now you understand." Karina's thoughts carried a weight of sadness. Each gift weakens the boundaries, but there's more. She moved closer, her iridescent scales reflecting patterns of light that seemed to hypnotize. "Some of my people believe we've found a solution. If we could find beings from other dimensions willing to help us stabilize the quantum barriers." She left the thought unfinished, but Finn understood. They weren't just studying compatibility. They were looking for allies, for partners who could help them repair the damage to their dimension. The implications made his head spin. As if responding to his thoughts, the water around them began to pulse with new patterns. Karina's expression turned urgent. Something's wrong, she projected. The barriers. They're thinning faster than expected. Finn's instruments confirmed it. Energy readings were spiking off the charts, and the water temperature was fluctuating wildly. Above them, the surface of the ocean began to churn, though there wasn't a storm in sight. Your wish. Karina's thoughts came faster now, tinged with worry. It was small, but it was enough to trigger something bigger. The barriers between our worlds are becoming dangerously thin in this location. Through the darkness, Finn saw other shapes moving, more of Karina's kind, their forms barely visible as they worked to stabilize the growing disturbance. Their combined bioluminescence created patterns so complex they hurt his eyes to look at directly. You have to leave, Karina insisted, her mental voice tight with concern. It's not safe for you here now. The quantum fluctuations could interfere with your equipment. But Finn hesitated. Let me help, he offered. There must be something I can do. Karina's expression softened, even as the chaos around them intensified. You already are helping, she projected. By understanding, by caring. But right now, you need to return to your station. Tomorrow night, if we can stabilize this tear, I'll explain everything. About why I chose to reveal myself to you, about what my people really need. Before Finn could protest, she dissolved the breathing bubble and gave him a gentle push upward. As he ascended, he watched her join the others, their combined energies working to contain the growing rift. The last thing he saw before the darkness swallowed them was Karina looking up at him, her eyes holding a promise, or perhaps a warning, about what tomorrow would bring. Back in his station, Finn spent hours analyzing the data his suit had recorded. The energy patterns were unlike anything in scientific literature, suggesting possibilities that both thrilled and terrified him. As dawn approached, he made a decision. He began composing an encrypted message to his old mentor at the Institute. If things went wrong, someone needed to know what was happening in the waters off North Point Lighthouse. Dawn never came to North Point Lighthouse that morning. Instead, the horizon remained locked in an eternal twilight. The sun's rays bent and distorted by forces Finn's instruments couldn't fully measure. Ships had begun reporting navigational errors within 50 miles of the station, and marine life was evacuating the area en masse, as if fleeing from an unseen threat. The encrypted message Finn had sent to his mentor bounced back undelivered. Communications were becoming increasingly unreliable as the quantum disturbances intensified. He stood at his observation window, watching sheets of ethereal light dance across the waves, the visible manifestation of two dimensions grinding against each other like tectonic plates. His equipment detected a massive energy surge underwater around noon. Through the station's external cameras, Finn watched in awe as a massive shape emerged from the depths, a structure that seemed to be made of living light and crystal, rising from the ocean like a cathedral, built by beings who had mastered both science and dreams. It's a stabilization anchor. Karina's thoughts touched his mind, though she was nowhere to be seen. Come down. It's time you learned everything. This dive was different. The water itself seemed charged with potential, and his instruments registered impossible readings before shorting out completely. As he descended, he saw that the crystalline structure was actually a vast network of quantum channels, designed to redirect and balance the energies bleeding between dimensions. Karina waited at the base of the structure, but she wasn't alone. With her was a council of her kind, their forms more varied and alien than he had imagined. Some appeared almost human-like, while others were closer to pure energy given form. All of them radiated power and ancient knowledge. Finn Barrett, one of the council members, projected, their thoughts carrying the weight of centuries. Your connection with Karina has proven what we hoped, that your species might be compatible with ours. But time grows short. Through a series of shared mental images, they showed him the true scope of the crisis. Their dimension wasn't simply dying, it was collapsing, and the effects were beginning to ripple across multiple realities. The stabilization anchor was a desperate measure, an attempt to create a controlled point of contact between dimensions. We need beings from your world to help maintain the quantum barriers, Karina explained, moving closer to him. The process of joining our dimensions must be gradual, controlled, but it requires anchors on both sides, beings who can serve as living bridges between realities. Another council member moved forward, their form shifting like smoke underwater. Karina has chosen you as a potential anchor, but the process is dangerous. It would change you at the quantum level. You would become something neither fully human nor fully of our kind. The implication struck Finn like a physical blow. They weren't just asking for his help, they were asking him to become something entirely new, a hybrid being capable of existing in both dimensions. The scientist in him thrilled at the possibility, but the human in him trembled at the cost. Show him, Karina projected to the council. With their combined power, they created a vision of what could be. Finn saw himself transformed, able to breathe water as easily as air. His consciousness expanded to perceive quantum realities he could now only theorize about. He would be a pioneer of a new kind of evolution, helping to guide both species toward a shared future. But he also saw the risks. The transformation could fail, leaving him trapped between states of being. And even if it succeeded, he would never fully belong to either world again. He would be forever changed, forever different. Why me? He asked, though in his heart he already knew the answer. Karina's response came not in words but in memories, every moment of wonder they had shared, every flash of understanding that had passed between them. She had chosen him because he had looked into the unknown with hope rather than fear, with curiosity rather than suspicion. There are others like you, the council projected. Around the world, our kind have found humans who might be suitable. But you are here now, when we need you most. The barriers continue to weaken. Without intervention, both our worlds face catastrophe. As if to emphasize their point, a tremor passed through the water. The stabilization anchor pulsed with emergency patterns, its crystal lattices straining to contain the growing dimensional instability. In the distance, Finn saw more rifts opening, windows into a world of impossible beauty and terrible power. You don't have to decide immediately, Karina projected softly, her luminescence dimming to a gentle glow. But we don't have much time. By tomorrow night, the anchor will either stabilize both dimensions or fail completely. If it fails, she didn't need to finish the thought. Finn could see the consequences in the increasingly chaotic patterns of energy around them, in the way reality itself seemed to be unraveling at the edges of his perception. Whatever he decided, the world as he knew it would never be the same. The final sunset over North Point Lighthouse painted the sky in colors that had never existed before on Earth. Quantum distortions turned the clouds into kaleidoscopes of impossible hues, while the ocean below churned with patches of luminescent water that acted like windows between worlds. Finn stood in his laboratory for what might be the last time, fingers tracing the worn edges of his research journals. The decision he'd reached during those long hours of solitude felt both terrifying and inevitable. His instruments registered the growing disaster outside. Dimensional barriers dissolving like sugar in hot water, reality itself becoming increasingly unstable. When he dove into the transformed waters, he didn't need equipment to find his way. The stabilization anchor blazed like an underwater sun, its crystalline structures pulsing with emergency patterns. Around its base, dozens of Karina's people worked frantically to contain the growing rifts, their combined energies creating webs of light that held reality together by increasingly thin margins. Karina broke away from her work as he approached. Even in crisis, her otherworldly beauty took his breath away. "You've decided," she projected, reading the resolution in his mind. "Yes," Finn thought back, their mental connection stronger than ever. "But I have conditions." The council gathered quickly, their forms flickering between states as they struggled to maintain multiple dimensional frequencies at once. Finn felt their desperate hope as he shared his plan. "The transformation can't be just for me," he projected clearly. "If we're going to create anchors between dimensions, we need to do it right. I've identified other research stations, other scientists who would understand, who would help. We need to coordinate, to create a network of stability points around the globe. He showed them his research, decades of documented anomalies that suddenly made sense. Other places where the barriers between worlds were naturally thin, where humans had unknowingly recorded evidence of dimensional bleeding. A network, one council member projected thoughtfully. Multiple controlled contact points instead of a single massive rift. It could work. It has to work, Karina added. We're out of alternatives. Another violent tremor rocked the anchor. Through growing rifts in reality, Finn caught glimpses of Karina's home dimension, an endless ocean of quantum energies and impossible life forms, beautiful but dying. In other rifts, he saw only void, the complete absence of reality that would claim both worlds if they failed. The transformation must begin now, the council projected urgently. Are you ready? Finn reached out and took Karina's hand. Her touch sent quantum fire through his nerves, the first step in a change that would remake him at the molecular level. Together, he thought, and felt her gratitude and fear and hope mirror his own. The council moved to encircle them, their combined energies creating a cocoon of pure possibility. As the transformation began, Finn experienced everything at once, excruciating pain as his body reimagined itself, explosive neural growth as his mind expanded to encompass new dimensions of reality, and through it all, Karina's presence anchoring him to purpose. He became aware of the ocean in ways his human mind could never have comprehended. He felt the currents as extensions of his own body, sensed quantum possibilities like new colors in his expanded spectrum of consciousness. Humanity remained his core, but it was humanity evolved, adapted to bridge the gap between worlds. When the change was complete, Finn opened new eyes to see both dimensions at once. The anchor's true purpose became clear, not just a bridge, but a template for a new kind of existence. Through his transformed senses, he could perceive similar points of potential around the globe, places where the right humans could become similar bridges. It's time, Karina projected, her thoughts now as clear as his own heartbeat. Together, they began the delicate process of stabilizing their local dimensional intersection, using their combined quantum resonance to strengthen the barriers while maintaining a controlled point of contact. As they worked, Finn broadcast a signal through both dimensions, a call to others like himself, humans who had glimpsed the truth about reality's fluid nature, and to Karina's people who had found potential partners in other locations. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Around the globe, other contact points began to stabilize as more transformations were initiated. Hours blended together as they fought to maintain the delicate balance. The stabilization anchor's crystalline lattices slowly shifted from emergency red to a steady blue-white glow. The violent rifts in reality began to heal, replaced by smaller controlled contact points that would allow both dimensions to gradually strengthen each other rather than tear each other apart. In the end, as a new dawn approached, Finn floated with Karina in their shared realm between worlds. His humanity remained intact, but forever changed, expanded to encompass wonders he once could only dream about. Through their mental link, he felt her joy and relief, and something deeper, a connection that transcended both their species. What happens now? He projected, though he could already sense the answer in the quantum currents around them. Now, Karina responded, her form shifting through colors that represented hope in her native language. We build something new. Together. The lighthouse above them stood sentinel over a transformed world, its beam cutting through air and water that would never again be quite the same. As Finn looked toward the horizon with his new senses, he saw not an ending but a beginning. The first moments of a future where humanity would finally reach its full potential, guided by beings who had mastered the very fabric of reality. In the depths below, the stabilization anchor continued its quiet work, maintaining the delicate balance between worlds. And in the space between dimensions, two beings who had dared to bridge the ultimate divide began planning their next impossible adventure.